what I typically like to do is say, let me have you come and watch this in action. Because it's one thing to tell somebody, if you introduce computer science at the elementary level at your school, you're going to see a lot of great things happening. First and foremost, what you're going to see is a tremendous commitment to equity, meaning you don't have to wait until junior high and make this an elective offering and then hope that you can recruit the right students into the class or get a nice representation of your student body. If you do it at the elementary level where all students have access to it, you will find that some of the students that you might not have otherwise thought would be good at this are actually very good at it and love it. And so we've seen success with special education students, students on the autism spectrum. We've seen students who you might not otherwise think really have a gift for some kind of academic pursuit really blossom and really shine when it comes to coding and computer science. And sometimes it's just the way it appeals to them. They're very good at consuming code and consuming technology, and when we can introduce them to the creative powers of coding and let them come up with their own creations and their own projects, it really sends a strong message to students. So that's sort of one thing that I can tell them, but I say, come and watch this in action. Nothing more magical than two things that we see and do. One is when our facilitators work with teachers and we see, especially that very first session where they come in with a lot of preconceived notions about how difficult coding is. I mean, some of them are thinking ones and zeros, binary code.
Right.
Some of them are thinking really complicated syntax, and then we take them through a process where we introduce them to Scratch, for example, where the way the introduction is typically done is we just have them open up Scratch and start playing around with some of the icons and seeing what they can do. And they're coding, but they have no idea that they're really coding until we stop and let them know that, hey, congratulations, you just created your first algorithm. And so I've had a chance to be with administrators in those settings with new teachers, and they say two things that are really critical. One is, this is great because it's hands-on. It's not just sit and get professional development, which that's kind of what a lot of our teachers think. And we know that kind of professional development or that kind of learning environment is not conducive to the best learning. It's when someone can learn in the context of actually doing it, and that's what we take a lot of pride in. And so that experience of seeing new teachers be introduced to coding and computer science, and almost within minutes sometimes go from trepidation and fear to laughter and fun and engagement. And then the next thing that we do that's really exciting to see is when one of our facilitators will do what we call model teaching. So you can sit in a classroom and sit in professional learning and you actually have a hands-on experience. But then when you get to see someone teaching your own class of students, and those students very well, their tendencies and their behavior and what kinds of things that they get bored with and what kinds of things they like. But so then to see someone who knows how to facilitate a coding lesson, do that with your very own group of students, that's where the real magic happens, because then it's not an intellectual exercise anymore. It's like, okay, now I can see myself in that role, applying what I've just learned. And as we do the professional development over time, we'll come back every 6 to 8 weeks and reinforce what they've been taught and teach new concepts. And we see the teachers grow in confidence as they learn new skills and then watch them apply that in the classroom. That's what's really exciting. So I encourage my administrator friends is to see it in action, rather than just trying to experience it intellectually.
Yeah, my former superintendent, Dr. Betsy Hargrove, she did the same thing. So she would constantly have administrators from other districts just go into either my classroom or another coding teacher's classroom just to see, what does this look like? What does our professional development look like? And can this be done at this grade level? Because there is some hang up for some people in terms of thinking that coding or computer science is too difficult for younger kids.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot. And then I share with them my experiences of being in a kindergarten classroom and seeing the kids as they come into the room. They just almost sprint to the over part to pick up their iPads.
Yeah.
And run over and if they're already in the middle of a project, they just open up their iPad and they start working on their project where they left off. They can't even read yet, but they're doing fairly sophisticated coding work, at least as an administrator would think of it. That is really exciting. And it is not just playing around, because there's a lot of administrators, they think, well, we've got a computer lab, but the kids just go in there and goof around and look stuff up and play games and do other things. When you see a student that's actually working on something they care about, that's when it really, really gets exciting.
This excerpt was from podcast number 19 of the CSK8 podcast, which is titled Advice for School Administrators Interested in CS for All with Clark Merkley. You can listen to this episode and hundreds more by searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app.